Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. I'm here with Tim Seeley. How you doing?
I'm great. Glad to be here and happy to finally get to talk to you.
Yeah, we've been doing a dance for weeks. You're trying to find a time. I work during the days and talk at night, and then you're the opposite schedule, So
Yeah.
we can never find. But fortunately, I broke my neck, so I have some free time during the day, and we can actually talk.
Something never said. Fortunately, I broke my neck.
Yeah. So first off, how are you? So glad. I'm a big fan. I've been a fan of yours. I don't know. Just Hack and Slash caught my eye right at the beginning, and I've been buying Hack and Slash way from the beginning. I absolutely love the comic, and then there's a funny thing because I'm like an anal retentive and I pay attention. I got Revival, and I didn't even realize that was your comic. I loved Revival every month. I was, that was one of the comics I was showing to people who weren't into comics. This is the kind of stuff you should be, you know. And then Local Man came out of nowhere. I'm sorry, I'm talking so much. I'm excited to finally talk to you.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's totally. They're different, so I can see how you might not. I mean, they're horror books, but one is like, kind of a exploitation booby book, and the other one's like a serious book. And Revival, kind of gave bridges the way more, I think, clearly to Local Man, which is sort of, rural stuff,
Oh,
but with
we'll get to Local Man. I love Local Man too. I've been that came out. I think it was up to issue 5 before I was like, wait a minute, this is a Tim Seeley book, and I had to go get all the back issues. I love that because I'm a classic superhero guy, So I'm always talking about superheroes. I love superheroes, Superman, Fantastic Four, X-Men, and that's why I was surprised that I liked Hack and Slash because I never liked horror comics. It wasn't until I'm old. I'm a lot older than you. It wasn't until Pacific Comics made Twisted Tales with Bruce Jones that
Jones. I
realized
love
that,
there.
yeah, Robert Corbin and Robert Corbin rather, and Bernie Wrightson and Bruce Jones. So now I'm a horror. As you can see, I got my Wolf Fancy shirt on. I know you had Brian Bound do. Yeah, he drew a couple of your issues. So you went from, like you said, exploitation, Hack and Slash. Then you went like more serious psychological with Revival, and then you're at Local Man, which is I want to say 90s Image comics, and then more modern, like self-reflective comics, but it's on purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Local Man he was like a 90s extreme superhero who had like a falling out, like kind of disgraced, goes back home, and now he's not the most popular superhero in town. He kind of stumbles across things, and the newspaper says Local Man saves the day, hence his name, and now he finds himself with a target on his back. It's a real clever comic.
Thank you. I appreciate it. When you hear you describe it, that's
So what brought you back to superheroes? I mean, go ahead. I talk too much.
Well, not at all. I love superheroes. I came into comics via superheroes, but I'm also not a guy who loves comics because I love superheroes. I love comics first, and I love a whole bunch of genres. And so that's why I want to do horror stuff, and I wanted to do fantasy, and I want to do all this other stuff because you know the superhero part of it is not the main reason that I like comics. On the other hand, I do love superheroes, and I am a kid. I grew up. I was 13 in 1990. I was 15 when Image debuted, and I don't know if there's a better timing for a person to become a fan of Image Comics. I mean, I'm wearing an Image Comics shirt right now. But they were looking back at them. I can kind of see the criticism that happened at that time, and even sort of my own reaction to them now. But that they weren't great stories. Often they were really just sort of all about the art. But on the other hand, they just crackled with energy, and they felt really new, and they felt like something that hadn't been done before. And they were the first people to really push the idea that these were creator-owned comics. And when I was a kid, I had friends who wanted to grow up to write DC comics, and I wanted to grow up and make an Image comic. That was my goal from 15 on. The moment I picked up Youngblood 1 or Wildcats 1 or Spawn 1 or Savage Dragon, and that's what I wanted to do. So for me, like, you know, right at the beginning of the pandemic, I had kicked around some ideas for a book, and I threw just sort of the short pitch of what I want to do, this ideal local man, to Tony Fleece, and he and I were. It was, right before the pandemic. No one knew what was coming, and he really liked the basic idea, and he said, "I'll get back to you about that." And he started thinking about it, and then we all got locked down, stuck in the house for months when that first started, at least 6 weeks. And so Tony and I just sort of started throwing stuff back together, and I think part of that, being stuck at home and feeling kind of freaked out and not being sure what was going to happen, kind of infused this thing that was originally, kind of a nostalgia thing, but it fueled it for even to, it had to be something bigger. It couldn't be just nostalgia, because I knew I was sitting at home and everything sucked, and that I wanted to return to a simpler, better time. But I also knew, like, that wasn't the case, and I had to be sort of more reflective about it. So I think something while we're having a great time making this book, we're also like, we need to make sure that we also make fun of it. And one of the biggest things about those 90s superhero comics is that, like, the characters were often just incidentally superheroes. Like, they didn't really stand for anything. They didn't have beliefs. They would just like to save the day, but mostly they just look cool.
Right.
And so part of the thing that we wanted to talk about there was, like, you know, this was a time in which we sort of treated superheroes and their supporting cast as just a place to hang cool shit on. So that's kind of what Local Man became about, in addition to it being, sort of a crime story and, with a 90s superhero riff inside it.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, that you actually have like a I'll say a 2020 or a modern cover on one side. You'll flip it over and it'll have like a 90s image, early stuff. It's just so much fun. I just think it's a lot of fun. What you said about you were 15 years old, you were the perfect age, because I love the comics that I got when I was 15 years old. I'm older than you. For me, it's like Bronze Age 80s Marvel. You know what I mean? Like the Chris Claremont X-Men and John Byrne and George Perez on the Teen Titans and Legion of Super. So I love that. You're 15 years old. You got into Image Comics. That's what you love.
I mean, I love stuff too, but there's a thing that it's sort of like the thing what happens the first album you get when you're
right.
13, 14, and like, it doesn't matter how good it is. It matters how it makes you feel like you've discovered something. And I think everybody should get that era. Everybody should have that. And
Right.
Mine is that Image era of stuff, and Tony's too. I mean, he and I are the same age, um, and that's one thing that we always related about it, and we always talked about too. Is like, it wasn't just the Image books. We loved all the books inspired by Image. Some of them were terrible, but we didn't care. There was like this freedom. It was, I think, I love the Bronze Age Marvel stuff, but there's a clarity and a professionalism to those books, which because the people who made them were great, but
Right.
it also is a wall. Like, when you're 15, you don't look at John Byrne and you see that stuff printed on newsprint and see those colors, and it looks like this beautiful item from another world, and it's really hard to perceive at 15, especially as a kid in Wisconsin, how someone made that, right? Like, you can't even sort of conceive of what I have to do this, but like, you look at those Image books or some of those, like, Hall of Heroes or Entity Comics or any of the sort of things that were inspired by Image, and you can see yourself making them, because they're, sometimes they're not very good, or but that was kind of cool. I think there's a sort of welcome mat on those kind of books that tells someone, hey, you can join us. Like, you don't have to be quite a genius like Byrne or Claremont or George Perez, yet. Like, we will check out your crazy shit.
And so you were there for the beginning, right? So like you saw that Image just started. That's got to be like, this is the new kid on the block. This is
I was at Chicago Comic-Con in 1992 when they debuted. I waited in line to get Todd McFarlane and the real Al Simmons and signatures, and I met Jim Lee and Eric Larson, and it was, my mom and dad are there, and they're like sweating outside, and they're like, I hope this is worth it, but they were so supportive, and they thought that we love this. I have two brothers. It was like, they love this so much, this must be cool. And yeah, the nostalgia there, obviously, just a huge factor. But I'm never without everything I make. Like Hack Slash 2, I love B movies, I love horror movies, I love slash movies, but I make fun of them too. Like I don't blindly love anything except for my daughter. Other than that, everything I love, is something I make fun of.
Yeah, oh yeah. My older brother's into horror movies the way I'm into comics. He's got like just like I have a room full of comics, he's got a room full of horror movies. And we went to a convention. Stanley and George Romero were both there, and we
Oh,
were
that's
like,
amazing.
you know what I mean? Like we were both like geeking out like little
Yeah,
kids. My brother's like the 6'4" tattooed biker, and he was like, you know,
that's amazing.
I love that. When you get to fanboy gush out about something like that. So I can imagine that would have been the same for you. Are you like a Romero fan also?
Oh God, yes. Yeah, I mean, the original Dawn of the Dead is probably my favorite horror movie. I mean, it's way up there. So yeah, I mean, and those guys are, Stanley and Romero are
Yeah.
both like scrappy do-it-yourselfers, who kind of change the way people do things, and I think that's, you know, those are once in a generation guys. So yeah, absolutely.
So like I said, I don't know how, I don't remember. It was a while ago, but I stumbled onto to Hack and Slash almost at the beginning, and I really liked, the sexy schoolgirl, the big monster. It like you said, it tongue in cheek, exploiting slasher film stuff. I mean, it is what it is. It's a lot of fun. And then you did Revival, which is horror, and then now I'm gushing over Local Man. I'm telling people about it. Just so I went on Wikipedia and checked out, because I don't claim to know everything about it. I did not realize how much mainstream stuff you did.
Oh yeah.
I like all of your creator owned stuff, and I was like, oh my god, you wrote so much DC, and
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been doing this for 20
yeah,
years, 22, I guess, 23. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely seasoned, is what I would say. But yeah, I've always kind of done stuff where I do like, career wise, I try to balance those things. I do, I'll do like a year or something doing as much company stuff as I can and save up some money, and then I'll do creator own stuff, and then maybe I'll try to do, two at But I've always tried to do that because I sort of recognize that if you just work for Marvel and DC, that you don't have anything for yourself. So I've always tried to have a little bit of one toe in each pool, I guess.
yeah, and you pretty much were one of the people that my friend Brian Bow of Wolf and Bats. You were one of the people that gave him one of his first starts.
Yeah,
You saw him, his
I
creator
love
owned
those.
Blue Shot. Yeah,
I mean, I actually have a Brian book from I think it's called Tales from Blue Sagoth, and
yeah,
it's indie like like a Ashcan book that I bought at Chicago Comic Con in 1995 or six, I think. So, I've always been into the same shit, and I know talent when I see it. So when I bought that book in '96 or '97, I just kept it, and I knew I was going to hire Brian someday, so I did.
yeah. He says hello. He's a he thanks you for that. He's still going strong. He's up to issue 13 for Wolf
Oh
and
yeah,
Betsy.
I buy them and back them, and I have the trade collections and stuff. So yeah,
Oh,
I'm a fan.
cool. That's great. Uh, so I want to talk about Local Man for a second. I found it such a high concept that it's kind of difficult to give an elevator pitch to people. When people tell me, "Oh yeah, I really like Local Man," I start explaining it, and so how would I explain it better? Because I'm trying to push this
I,
comic on other people.
yeah, Tony and I talked about this because one of the problems with it is it's super clean, easy pitch. But the
Uh,
cleanest version I can think of is essentially that a superhero on a big time team uh, is fired after 20 years of working in the game, and is sent home to his crappy small town where he's no longer able to use his costume or his name, and then he ends up getting involved in a sort of murder conspiracy involving one of his sort of forgotten supervillains, and it draws him through a bunch of um, people who really don't like him for sort of disappointing their town. So it's not the greatest pitch, but yes, that's basically it.
he's like the Super Bowl player who missed the field goal or something like that, and has
Yeah,
to go back home in shame.
I mean, and even sort of worse, I think, is because he the thing we were playing on was sort of, I grew up in a small town Wisconsin, and so one thing we are playing off was sort of the people who come from smaller places, like Tony and I both. And then when you leave, there's this sort of expectation that like, well, you left, you got to do something. You must be going to do something. And then if you came home and you didn't, you're just sort of, it's like your nightmare. And then the other thing we were kind of playing off of was this sort of, the Foxconn stuff, for instance, in Milwaukee area in Wisconsin, which was these jobs promised to these people by politicians, and it was elevate this town, and the people who sort of that were locals that were investing in this stuff, and then they didn't do it. It didn't go anywhere, and so all these people are left angry and disappointed. And so Jack is sort of both. He was supposed to be this sort of symbol of this town. He was supposed to be like the guy, the local boy done good. And then when he comes home, he was supposed to bring something with him. He was supposed to give them something with his training center for superheroes that was part of his recruitment, and it just didn't happen. And then we find out why it didn't happen, but and how he was involved in it, and also just sort of, I think there's a thing when you live in a small town, you leave it, you go off and you go somewhere, you kind of forget that place. You think you'll keep in touch with it, obviously, and you see your family and the people like that, but it's just it's in the rear view. And I think it was as a story we wanted to encapsulate all those things, plus nostalgia and kind of a story about superheroes themselves, kind of an like an anti the boys, I guess, because I love the boys, but it's sort of about how people, if they get power, turn out bad, no matter who they are. And we wanted to kind of be like, well, what if a guy was supposed to turn bad and he just keeps being a good guy? Like, no matter what,
he's getting nicer as he goes along. He starts out kind of like an arrogant jerk.
Yeah,
like he's getting humbled.
Pretty used to living in one sort of life, and he's resentful when he gets home. He doesn't want to be there.
Like I think of him as like he is a physical representation of what was promised to this town, and like he's a physical representation of the failure of everybody's promises. The town was supposed to benefit financially from like this center that never developed, the money influx, stars and everything. And then not only did that not happen, but the local star comes back. So I think everybody's just taking out the resentment. Like, I was going to open up a deli, and now my deli doesn't work because there's no customers, because there's no tourists or there's no worker. So you are the scapegoat of all of our broken dreams.
Right. Yes, exactly. Which is not a clean pitch, but yes, that's what it's about.
Right. So that was our elevator. That was an escalator pitch.
Yeah. It's not like Hack Slash, but it's like, the girl at the end of the horror movie, she goes after the other slasher. That's like the easiest pitch on earth,
Oh, I got to ask you because you just reminded me. There's a board game called Final Girl. Have you ever played it?
No, I don't really play board games.
It's a solo only game where you're basically Cassie Hack. You're the survivor of a horror movie, and you got to go avenge everybody. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. We were sort of the first ones to pick up on turning that into a thing, but obviously it's a trope that everybody knows now. So now there's lots of stuff sort of based around it. So.
Somebody wanted to ask, do you ever go to the New Jersey Cherry Hill Horror Convention?
I've never been. That sounds fun.
Yeah, I go. My sister lives in Cherry Hill, so I went like every year up until COVID. And I'm not sure. That's matter of fact, that's where I saw Stan Lee and Romero.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that must have been a while ago.
Before COVID was the last time I went.
As much as I can. They're not usually as lucrative for me as the comic book ones, and I don't get invited to many, but I like to do them often just as a fan. So
there you go. One of my favorite character in Local Man is not the main character. It's the police sheriff who, I think he's such a cool, conflicted character. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but he has a legit reason not to like this guy.
Yeah.
and he's still a good guy. Like you hate him at first, but he's still doing the right thing. I love characters like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was supposed to be sort of the flip of Jack. He came to this small town, Farmington, to take a job. He becomes the basically the police chief, and he adopts the town. He takes it in. He's from Chicago, and he
takes it seriously.
He takes it seriously, and he takes the people seriously, and so he's kind of the opposite of Jack, which is why we set him up to be that kind of foil. And he absolutely has a reason to hate Jack, but he also, you know, there's all these other sort of factors like, the cop versus the superhero and the law that and all these sort of things that don't really bother him, but he's able to kind of get past. He doesn't treat Jack the same way as the other people because he just wants to help his town, which I think, yeah, we really like writing that guy too. He's
Yeah. So how do you break up the writing between both of you guys? I mean, both of you guys are the co-creators,
yeah,
and I know you draw too. You know, do you do
I draw
layout?
half the book, or not half, a third of the book. Tony draws 2/3.
Yeah. So how do you break that up?
I mean, we just the way we make it is that like for every issue, we get on the phone and we talk it out, or we get on Zoom or something, and we just kind of plot out what needs to happen. And then I'll usually take the first draft and I'll write, a fairly detailed script with most everything in it. But then I pass it to Tony, knowing there's things he'll change. And like one of his big things is he cuts stuff. I tend to be overly verbose. I talk too much. So he cuts stuff, and then he'll move stuff around sometimes. His instincts for how things can play in a unique way are really strong. So, and then he passes it back to me, and I'll do like one more pass, and then I'll draw my four to 6 pages, and he'll draw the 18 to 24 or whatever, depending on how many we packed in there. Um, and then we kind of go through at the end when we do when we do the lettering. Tony does lettering, so we're able to kind of keep massaging stuff all the way till the end. So it's like a pretty fluid, slightly improv process. I think, we plan things in Local Man, but I don't plan Local Man like I plan Revival, and I don't, there's a lot more sort of riffing because you know I'm working with someone who actively writes, and and actively he's working with someone who draws. So like we're doing a different thing than we have done in different processes.
Oh, that's cool. Now, is this a finite series? Do you have an ending planned?
The current sort of run goes up through 25. Goes to 13, and then it jumps ahead a year to issue 25, and then that can act as a sort of little mini end, and then we're figuring out exactly what we're doing next. It's set up to sort of go through this particular very important storyline that we had planned, and then that lets us get some time. We can put out all the trades, we can put out a hardcover, let people catch up, and then we'll come back and do something.
Are you doing like that jump like Image did?
Yeah.
Issue 25, like right in the middle. I forget. They went like
Well,
one, two, and then issue 25.
Yep.
Wow, that is a deep cut.
Yeah, I know. No, I don't know why we're doing it. We just had to do it. But yeah, after 95, Image did a sort. It was supposed to be across the titles, but it was only the Youngblood books and some of the Wildstorm books. But they jumped ahead from the issues they were at to 25 a year. So, and then that gave you sort of a glimpse of what was going to happen. So Supreme and what else did it? Stormwatch and
Stormwatch Supreme are the ones I have. I know that others did it too, but I don't remember. But I remember. That's so funny that you're doing that, because that is,
yeah, we'll see.
It back to 90s Image, and then you're literally doing their first publicity stunt.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, so it's but it's very much planned the way we did it, the way 13 ends and the way 25 works. It's not going to play like the former Image one did, where it didn't quite line up. It really lines up, and it's meant to sort of show you sort of two different sides to Jack after the events of 13. So I'm really happy with it. I think it came out great. It's also sort of about legacy and these superhero books and all that sort of stuff. So pretty happy with it.
Oh, I know you said you only had a half hour, so is there anything that I didn't talk about? And I know I talk a lot, so maybe I missed something.
No. I appreciate it. You're good. If you have any other questions, I can take another one.
Sure. Anybody from the chat? How is it when you work for? Again, I'm flabbergasted. I missed that you worked so much for Marvel and DC. Do they approach you? Do you approach them? Do you pitch something, or are you just like, hey, Tim, you got any work you want?
I mean, it's a little bit of all those things. I mean, I have a pretty long relationship with DC, which goes back probably about 15 years or something. They originally reached out to me to do some drawing stuff, and then Revival came out and they asked me to write some stuff. And so, and then I just kind of have a relationship with the editors there. And then when I'm sort of in the mood, I've got some space, I start looking for work. I usually email DC and say, hey, how's it going? Do you guys have anything you're working on? Or sometimes I'll have a very specific idea, like Lobo versus Superman was a very specific idea I had that I wanted to do.
Yeah, that was fun.
Or something like that. And with Marvel, my relationship is kind of just like every once in a while I get an email from them and it's like, hey, you want to do something? And if it's cool, I'll be like, yeah, sure. So that's kind of how it's been. Yeah, but I'm a freelancer, so
You also worked with Brian Pulido. You did that Chaos series.
I mean, with Dynamite, I work with Vault Comics. I work with when they were still doing stuff, Aftershock, IDW. I'm a freelancer. Like I take a lot of work, and I try to speaking of Vault, there's Deathstalker, which is a book I did. The third issue just came out. One of the things I'm most proud of, it's a sort of sequel to an '80s series of barbarian movies, and I loved them when I was a kid or hated them depending on the day. And we did a sequel to that. So again, that was freelance. I worked with Slash from Guns N' Roses, Vault Comics, Jim Terry, and so I'm kind of always I'm always looking for work because I'm a freelancer and a writer. But I'm also I'm a little bit able to sort of be like pick things that are that I feel like I can do a good job on. So and then on the side, I teach and I write for Mortal Kombat, and I do all that kind of stuff too.
You teach? What do you teach?
I teach comics, and then I teach concept art at Columbia College, Chicago.
Oh wow, cool, good for you.
No
wonder you're so busy.
I gotta hustle, man. I got bills to pay and a house. I got a house, and I got a kid. Yeah.
About it, I living on disability for the past couple of weeks. And
man, yeah.
Chop my teeth out. I don't know if I misremembered this, but there was talks for a revival TV series, like a Netflix show or an HBO show.
Sci-Fi Network. Yeah, they're working on it. I talked to the producer and director pretty regularly. They're in their writer's room right now. They are set to start filming in September for a July 2025 release. Yeah.
Because that is, to me, that is perfect for a show like that. It's dark, moody, kind of scary. And I don't want to spoil it, but I always play a game where I try to beat the writer. Like as I'm reading along, I'm like, okay, if I could figure this out, whatever. But I don't want to twist it, but I'll just say you beat me on that one. I did not get it. You know what I mean? So good for you.
That was wonderful. I mean, that was, that's hard to do, but we wanted, the way Revival was written originally was that, Mike and I had just come off of working on other stuff, and Mike wanted to do something like Lost, where there was big mystery, except he wanted it to end with us knowing like the ending, which
right. It wanted to be like Lost, but like good and
yeah, I mean, right,
tied together, it made sense.
Right, like Lost, we just knew they had a vibe. They didn't know what the ending was, so we're like, what if we set up a huge mystery that went across the story and drove everything, but we know before we start. There's no pulling shit out of our asses.
Yeah. That's how mysteries are. You got the crime, and then you work backwards.
Yeah. So that's how we did it, which I think makes it so that it holds together. It's I think the hard part about Revival was that we wanted to sometimes tell stories about other people, and the readers would be like, no, I want to know about the mystery. I want to know about the sisters. We'd be like, yeah, but what about this? And so I think they'll take some lessons from us on the TV show, I'm sure.
Yeah, the vibe I got, I never thought Lost, but I thought like a Twin Peaks and Twin Peaks and also Northern Exposure. Yeah,
I mean, I at the time I hadn't seen Twin Peaks, and so when we started it, people mentioned it. So I went back and watched it. I was like, oh yes, I wish I had seen this when it came out, but I hadn't. But certainly like it's a Midwest story. I want to do a Midwest crime story. It's set in my hometown. I'm actually from Wausau, and so there was also the lesson of why to make up a fake town in Local Man, because that's also like making a town where you kill people and show the dark side of stuff. I don't recommend making it your hometown.
Yeah, next thing you know, you killed the local grocer or something like that.
Yeah,
what did I do to you? Here's a question from Logic Finest. He always has good comments. Do you teach actual artists or regular people? Yeah,
Wait,
I guess artists are irregular people.
Yeah.
I've always assumed that only artists take classes to improve their skill.
I mean, it's a college, so it's a private sort of a private college, I guess. Um, it's not a state school, but it's I mean, whoever can go there. Most of my students, it's kind of a mix of like really talented people and really energetic people who want to learn more, and it's all kinds of different kids. So yeah, I try to treat it like there's people with varied skills. I'm teaching you storytelling. I'm teaching you comics. I'm teaching you, you know, basics and perspective and how to use the things for mood. Like I don't need you to know everything about art in my class. So that's kind of how I treat it.
So like you teach them writing and art. I mean, because you do it all. So like,
Yeah, I teach them writing.
conceivably, they could have a full comic by the end of the semester.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is their assignment, basically. I
That
mean,
is
not 22 pages because that would kill college kids dead, and I wouldn't do it. But we do. They At the end of the semester they have like 5 to 6, 5 to 7 really good pages of comics. I think.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Logic Fighter says, when I say non-artists like me, I can't. Yeah, I can't draw to save my life.
Well, I mean, you don't have to be able to draw in my class, but it is helpful. I mean, I will, and I will teach you some drawing stuff, but drawing is just, repetition, right? I mean, it's just,
Right.
I think people think it like takes some kind of special skills. No, it's just, you have to just do it a shit ton of times. And then you build that muscle memory and you build, and some people obviously have more of
Oh,
a
you got
innate skill.
stopping by.
Oh,
Nightwing Rebirth was brilliant.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So, are you classically trained? Did you go to art school, writing school, or are you just one of those kids that just drew on everything like a precocious?
I mean, both. I'm not naturally skilled. I don't think. But I did draw a lot as a kid because I loved it. I lived in the country. There was nothing to do. My brothers and I just drew all the time. And then I discovered comics. So I was always drawing comics. I was like making full 22-page comics when I was 11.
Oh
Probably
wow!
maybe younger than that. I used to
Let's publish those. Let's see those.
did like a sort of like a Mad magazine called Very Very Stupid Comics. 11, and then
I love it.
I did like superhero stuff and horror stuff when I was a teenager. But then I mean, I went to college for illustration. I have a degree in illustration. So yeah, but a state school. I don't have like a private school. I just went to University of Wisconsin Eau Claire. So I'm not fancy. I just have a degree in illustration.
It's funny when you talk about the kids. I'm looking at you thinking, I'm so old. You're a kid to me. I'm like, how old are these kids you're talking about? But
they're really kids. Yeah.
I have to go because I have another talk at 7:00. I gotta have my dinner and then get prepared for another talk. Is there anything I left out? Anything you want to talk about?
No, we're good. Glad we can make it work, man. Appreciate
it. Yeah, been chasing each other back and forth. It's been so difficult with my schedule, your schedule. I'm a big fan. Like I said, I've been reading your stuff for a long time. I got to get more of your mainstream stuff. I've been following your creator-owned stuff with a lot of interest.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Pick up Nightwing or Grayson or Deathstalker. Those are. I think I did good jobs on those. In Master Universe, I did lots of Master Universe stuff too.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot. And let me. Do you have anything active right now besides Local Man that I didn't mention?
Yeah. What else is coming out? Right now is I'm doing Brave and the Bold, Nightwing and Dead Man with Kelly Jones at DC.
Oh wow, Kelly Jones, amazing. And then here's Marcus to my rescue with your website. You can check out everything.
Yeah.
And thanks a lot, everybody. I know. Thanks a lot. So glad to finally track you down and talk to you. Excellent.
How you doing, man? Feel better soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.